Well, I was sitting in the house thinking this morning. That's about as far as I got with it, so decided to come out here and do some stuff. We're gonna dive a little deeper into this old girl today. Got some new parts. Gonna grow under it for the first time ever and do stuff. Follow along. I saw in the back corner of this tailgate that it has the original dealer name. It's G&M Motor Company in Claremore, Oklahoma. It means the car's been local to me its whole life. Look at these rust holes. It's a sign of things underneath. You got to see this after I open it with my key. Now I have a mint condition trunk lid for this. See all that junk trapped up in that gutter caused this. This is the worst rusted trunk lid I've ever seen in my life. Just massive, massive damage. The hinge is just almost not even attached to anything. Or the latch, I mean. It's the original jack sticker. This is the original paint. It's a good sample for whenever I want to paint it. This paint looks good. Now we're going to go through the trunk. Well, after I show you all this rust damage, where all this crap has collected and just eaten out the whole entire trunk gutter area, I'm going to have to get a section off a parts car for that. It's pretty bad. It's a shame that that car was parked under a tree, because if it hadn't, there would be almost nothing wrong with it. Look at this little 8-track player. It's supposed to be under the dash. I'll definitely be cleaning this up and reinstalling it. That'll be really cool. It doesn't work and it's a little rusty, but here we have a can of oil. This oil is probably better quality than the crap you can buy off the shelf today because it actually has zinc in it. Here we have some antifreeze from a company I've never heard of. Then we got a jug of water. Look at this old RC. Plastic bottom, metal top. Anyone want to take a guess how old this is? I've not seen 2-liter bottles with the metal top. I'm probably old enough, but not old enough to remember. And then a Pepsi. Same story. Clearly this car had cooling problems. And again, a metal cap. Next we have a nothing bottle, just with water. Followed by more antifreeze. Obviously that water pump been a problem for a while. Next up, some brake fluid. .3 from the Wally World. Still has something in it. And some random junk. More random junk. Some shocks. An AC system from who knows what. Well, an observation I made is after getting all the junk out of the trunk, the rear end of the car came up about 3 inches. Maybe not that far, but got all the junk out of it. I also discovered this car was originally optioned with the low weight floor pan. And that I already had a extra belt or two. Yeah, that's the gas tank. That's the floor. Noise in the background's a rooster. for you people that aren't country folk. Anyways, it's a good thing I've done probably 50 trunk pans in my career, because this one's gonna need it. But for now, we'll just pretend like we didn't see that. Wanted to vacuum it out so all those trunks on top of the gas tank right there wouldn't be up on top of my dome. But anyways, that's that. Well, this is the first time I'm gonna be going under this car other than looking under it with a jack. Got to get in here and see if I can find the connector for the fuel sending unit and go pop that off. This is the last license plate on this car, and the last registration sticker was 84, year I was born. So this little guy here is my sending unit wire. Goes right into the floor there. Let's see. Oh, and there's my connector. So we'll just raise the car up and pop that puppy off. Get busy with getting this nasty tank out of there. Tank might actually be fine, I don't know, but it ain't worth fooling with in my experience. All right, let's go for a look under this car. No surprises, really. Frame's real solid. I've got to do the fuel tank strap. That's a screw-in bolt there. Usually don't have to take that out all the way. Fuel tank was a good choice. A big old dent in it here. And telltale signs of really old gas. It's still wet, but it's gummy. And the gas, whatever's in there, has been in there since 1986 or 7 at the latest. So we'll be having to get that little ground wire right there off. The challenge will be getting these bolts off without stripping them. I bought all new rubber lines for the brake system, which we're not doing today. I don't think so anyways. I found out I do actually have functioning park brakes, which is shocking. Usually the cables rust up. This is a GM BOP 8.2, not to be confused with the Chevy 8.2. Totally different animals. Clearly got a pinion leak. That'll have to be addressed. This came stock in pretty much all the 68, 69 Buicks. Some of the Canadian built cars, Grand Sports, some of them had 12 bolts, but this was your run-of-the-mill axle. Very little aftermarket support for these. Positracks are expensive. I think factory muffler, maybe not. It's really not that bad. It's got a little bit of chewy in that floor pan. The big chewy is that one. Don't that look sexy? This is the Space Saver extra ventilation, no cost added, optional driver's side floor pan with something hanging down 3 feet. Remnants of the carpet and insulation. This I already knew about. It's the Fred Flintstone floor. I don't know if I'm gonna do a whole entire pan in this car. I might do the whole thing side to side. It's got a little chewy here. I want to get the seats out, or attempt to, so I can tear this carpet out. This little girl has the new for 1969 in the Buicks Turbo 350. Typical of GM automatics, it leaks like crazy. I bought a rear output shaft seal, and it's obviously leaking there. It's also leaking out of the speedo housing seal. There's a big O-ring in there. The other major leak point, which this one is always also leaking from, the shift shaft seal right in there. And obviously the pans leak. It doesn't appear like the torque converter seal's leaking, although it'll probably start leaking after I start driving it. Another major leak point on these cars is the dipstick tubes. Basically your torque converter drains out, your fill level in your transmission goes way up. This is the starter. This dude has been totally submerged underwater, so it's a little lazy. And look at the cable. That thing is corroded. I don't know if it's chewed in half or what, but that is bad. That would explain some of the slow crank. I got a new starter in a box over there, so I don't know. Probably just go ahead and change it. It's cheap enough. The oil, or the engine, doesn't appear to have any major oil leaks. The valve covers obviously have been leaking. The only one that really is a concern is kind of that wetness right there at the bottom of the head gasket. So I don't know if that's leaking or if that's just runoff or wicking down from the oil pan. See my new fuel pump? My fuel lines are right there, and I would walk back and inspected them. They don't appear to have any major rust on the outside, and I'm only using the big one to supply. This pump is a one inlet only. So I may try to blow that line out once I get everything off. One thing cool about the Buicks, they're real easy to get to the oil filter. Don't get any easier than that. You can pull the oil filter off from the top if you want. The frame's in good shape, even where the battery side is. No major chewiness. This tire is real hard to roll. It's still got the pads and stuff. I remember when I bought the car, one of the brakes was locked up, so I had to pull the pads off. I couldn't remember which one, but it's clearly this driver's side front, or passenger side front. There's no retainer. I had to do that to get it out of the yard it was setting in. So whoever had this car liked greasing it. That ball of grease is about the size of a tennis ball. So anyways, the good news is nothing under this car is in bad shape as far as stuff that's hard to do or anything like that. It's just floor pans, really. So that's good news. We'll get started getting that gas tank out. So, based on what I find in the trunk, 3 bottles of water, 2 jugs of antifreeze. This girl had a pretty substantial antifreeze leak, which we already discovered in the water pump that we did last video. So that water is just tap water. That stuff has been in there for almost as long as I've been alive. And I honestly considered tasting it. I don't know why that popped into my head. I'm not going to, but And then over here is our selection of stuff that came out of the thing, the old trunk there. A drum from I don't know what. I don't think it came from this Buick. Oil fill spout, windshield scraper, a Walmart Discount City bag with a brand new battery post, which I might use. An antenna, 4 shocks, 3 of them are fronts. I'm not sure what's up there. And I didn't know it, but apparently Kmart used to make shocks. There used to be Kmarts around here. They're all gone now. And an old coil, which I think that was me. Threw that in there however long ago, 17 years. And a complete AC setup from I think a 68 or 9. I put that in there as well. I don't remember what car it came from, but, and an old spare, not a Buick wheel. And some light fixtures. Not sure what's up there either. One thing I always like to try to do before I take fasteners that have a bunch of crap on them that have been in for a long time off, especially bolts like this that are long, is I get the little wire drill and a brush chucked up and knock all the loose crap off the stud. That does is allow your penetrating oil to kind of penetrate a little better and not jam up your bit or your bolt when you're trying to extract it. Give it a little sniff of that. About half the time these break. So you better be planning a trip to the hardware store if you're doing one of these yourself. I have it pretty good because I have a lift and a transmission jack, but I've done a lot of these laying on the driveway. It's a lot less fun. All right, now I'm gonna get my 1/4 inch ratchet and bust that ground loose. Lots of times with an old car, if your gas gauge isn't working, you can check your ground wire from your sending unit and make sure that it actually is connected. Take it off, clean it, put it back on. And then with a lot of cars, including GMs and a lot of the old stuff, you can take your sending unit wire, which is, I don't know if you can see my hand or not, this little guy, the long wire that goes to your gauge, and you can ground it, and your gauge should read full one way, and then you unground it, and it should go full the other way. So that's just a quick way to test if your gauge works or if your sending unit's the problem. Typically it's a sending unit. Okay, I'm gonna get my impact on that and hammer away. I'm gonna grab my little 1/4 inch drive deal and pop my ground off. I'm not gonna do it with it tighty. Do it loosey-goosey, or would that be lefty-loosey? You always want to clean your ground before you put the ground on the car and the bolt before you put your new sending unit wire back on. About 90% of the problems I run into with old cars wiring is grounds. Second problem is people getting in there and working on them that don't know what they're doing. Electricals are one of those things you should just leave to a professional, unless you like burning cars to the ground. I recommend wearing these fancy things when you're working under a car. I only want to try to break these loose. I'm not trying to get them all the way off. I got to go get my transmission jack under the car. Like butter. Go the other way. There. That'll allow the penetrating oil to seep in there. I'm quite surprised that came loose, actually. We're gonna turn you around. I'm gonna do the other one on the other side. Give me a sec. This one's got a bunch of dirt in it. Okay, let me move you. An exhaust pipe right in the way. Wrong direction. Wrong way, Wally. Man, I'm eating the dirt. Oh, that's not fun. Go both directions, get the penetrating oil weeping down. Okay. Now I'm gonna get my transmission jack. These little units are a lifesaver. Not literally, but figuratively speaking, I should say they're a back saver or a face saver. Something like that. What I like to do is just run these things up and put a little pressure on the bottom of the tank. I have no idea how much fluid's in here. And I say fluid because it ain't gonna be gas. Whatever's in there quit being gas a long time ago. Okay, so I just preloaded a little bit. Doop, doop, zip the bolts out. If I can find my impact. I'm actually shocked that came out that easy. All right, let's move over and do the other one. Have you ever tried mechanicking while trying to work around a tripod with a camera on it? I'm shocked. That was a pleasant surprise. Usually you end up breaking those. Okay, so next little step here is gonna do a little delete on your fuel lines. Now, if it's a car you're driving all the time, you're gonna have gas coming out of here. And if you got a lot of gas in the tank, it's gonna keep on coming. So you're gonna wanna maybe put a vice grip on one side or both sides of your hose there, clamp it so no more fuel comes out, and then give them a snip and watch your eyeballs. This car's been parked for decades, so not as concerned, but either way, don't stand right under the hose. No surprise there, no fuel. Okay, and over here, we got two, you can't see them, but there's two little hoses that are the vents. These don't leak unless you tip the tank up. So I try to make sure I don't get underneath the lines when you're dropping the tank. I give these straps a little bend down, and the tank comes out like this. Whoop. You'll get to see that soon enough. Okay, we're all disconnected. Sometimes GM put build sheets on top of the fuel tanks. I've not actually found one. I found them in seat backs, but I'm always hopeful, but it's not likely. And it's even less likely you'd find one in good shape in a car like this. Okie dokie. At this point in time, I'm probably gonna eat rust. Let me get my gargles. I just hope all the gas in here is done dried up. If it ain't, I'm gonna drink it. Now, if you're doing this at home without one of these fancy whirling jack assemblies, you're gonna wanna make sure the car is way up high and or pull these straps all the way off. I'm just gonna let it down a little bit. These tanks, along with the Chevelles and stuff, have a long neck that goes right out the back, so you gotta let it down at an angle and pull it towards you, real gentle like. All that rust that I couldn't vacuum up on top of the tank that came from our floor pan delete kit, we go right in my mouth. Feels like the tank's empty. Gotta get her around the dual exhaust kit here that it does not have. Okay. It might have a little bit of fuel in it. What a stuff. Okay. Move my jack a little bit. Now, y'all don't laugh if I drop this tank. Actually, you can laugh all you want. Okay. So I'm going to get over here on the other side walk this back just a little bit and try my best not to drop it. Woo! Whatever's in that tank smells like my grandpa's dentures after a hard day at Golden Corral. Okay, she appears to be clear. Let's reposition and drop her down. And I haven't got any rust in my mouth yet. Come on down, baby. Ah, there is a build sheet on here. Unfortunately, it's destroyed. My first build sheet I found in a tank. On a tank. Okay. Lower down a little more. Woo, this thing stinks. Let's go ahead and just go backwards. Get my tank kind of balanced here a little better. Wish they'd have strapped that build sheet on the other side of the tank. It would still be in good shape. Oh God. Guess that Matt's tired of being up there. Oh, there comes the rust. Okay. Let's have a closer look when I drag it out. All right, tank is out. That went shockingly well. You can see the factory black paint under there, including some big old huge runs. And then an inch away from it, rust holes. Big rust hole. Now back to the tank. And this is why you don't, in my experience, ever trust an old fuel tank. I mean, all over the place. It has rust holes all the way through it. So you would never, ever be able to get this thing to function properly. That's the wire that strings back to go to the gauge. This is your ground wire. Most sending units come with these already on them. These are just your vent hoses. And this here is the coveted build sheet. You kind of just see the outline of it here. It's completely destroyed. It's taped to the gas tank. It's not legible. Just almost nothing can be made out. That's disappointing, but see, General Motors has a couple of trim options or whatever on there, but may find one in the seat or in a couple other areas. If there's one here, there's a good chance there's one somewhere else. Let's see, and that's the other corner of it. Well, this here is my new fuel storage container. Got this at a great price through my guys Nick and Boone at the old Riley's. This is the only way to do a fuel system. Just don't, if you pulled some old car out of the weeds, just put a new tank in it. Apparently I've cut myself. Got blood all over the place. I'm gonna go ahead and shoot just some cheap flat black paint on the top of this thing because I'm not doing the trunk pan yet. I don't want it to rust out. So I'm just gonna fog it on there a little bit, give it a little, and it'll have some kind of protection from what's going on above it until I have time to put a trunk pan in it. Ooh, I found a piece of my skin. Ah. That's obviously what cut me. Got a little there. Anyways, I'm gonna paint this up, put the sending unit in it, and we'll shove it in the hole. Only worried about the top. Just gonna have rust just setting on it. I haven't wiped this tank down. It's got some oily, not oily, but it's got some kind of sticky stuff on it, but I'm not even going to take it off because it'll help keep that rust from getting crazy. And also using this cheap aerosol, when I do the trunk pans, I'll have to pull the tank back out, and this will wipe off easy with paint thinner. If I was to put a actual paint gun type coating on it, it would be a lot thicker and a lot harder to get off. Just give her a little spritz of this. Primer and flat paints flash off real fast, so I can get this on here and mess with it in 15 minutes without having to worry about sticky paint. Not trying to do anything pretty here. This is strictly protect it until I can get the trunk pans done. Can't do everything at once, guys. I would like to, but I am not a rich man. Give us a good old coat here in the edge where it might trap stuff. I'm a po' boy. Well, not totally po'. I used to be a totally po' boy. That looks pretty good. That ought to keep it from rusting for at least 3 hours. All right, fellers. We've got the tanks pretty much dry. Got the new sending unit. Got my O-ring. I always put just a smidge of grease on it, just so everything's, you know, seats easy. I'm going to show you just from a testing troubleshooting standpoint, because a lot of people aren't familiar with electricity, how to troubleshoot it, anything like that. If you have a multimeter, even cheap ones, and you know anything at all about how to use basic tools, you can do an easy test on your little fuel level thingy. All you need to do is set it to the ohms setting, which is right there, the headphones. You can you've got a power lead here, and you've got a ground. All you need to do is get a good ground, then take your other lead, untangle your cables, set this one on your stud that goes to the wire. And you can hear it ringing out, and you can see this number. It says 2.0. Now, as you raise your float, that number should change as you move it. See, now it's 30, 41, getting up towards the full tank. And your full tank reading is 96.7, and half tank 40 range, then empty. So if you do this and you get no ring out, no numbers, or no variable rate here, it means your sending unit's bad. That's just a simple test. You always want to test them, even the brand new ones, before they go in the tank, because if there's anything wrong here, you do not want to put this in there, wrestle the tank up in there, and then find out you still have no gas gauge. So as long as you troubleshoot this, you'll know that at least you have a functioning sending unit from here, and you have to troubleshoot farther up the line. So, simple troubleshooting there. So we're going to take this and pop this little guy down in the tank. You want to be careful with this stuff. I mean, they're not super durable. Just get that in there. You want to make sure that you got that it'll seat fully down, which it does. This is a little crooked, but it doesn't matter. Get your lock ring. See, not sure which way that one goes, but spin this little feller. till it drops in. Then you just spin it, rotate her around. What you don't want to do is have your any of these tabs pop out. All right, so she's in there pretty snug. It's got little raised parts that you can just gently tap on. Work on one side, then the other. This is where the grease on the O-ring will help you tremendously. I want y'all's input. This is kind of off topic. What I need to do to make my videos more entertaining. I've got steady but pretty slow channel growth. So I legitimately want to know what I can do to improve the quality of what you're watching. I'm not thin-skinned, so you're not going to offend me. Just tell me what I need to do. Make it a little more exciting. Okay, so I've got it tapped around. I'll pull you off of there so you can see better, but my tabs, they'll just twist until these little raised portions hit the lock part of the ring. Everything's locked in. My O-ring, I look down in here and it's not all cattywampus. And before I button this up, I'm going to do one more test with my ohm meter, because you were hammering on it, and if something's come loose. I can't change the float level, but I should get a ring out of 0.2 or about that. 2.2, 2.3. So it's working. Most fuel sending units have a rating for the ohms. Most of the GM stuff is 0 to 30 ohms or 0 to 90. This is a 0 to 90. And they don't always read 100% accurate, but they're usually accurate enough where, unless you're running it all the way down to the empty every time, you should be fine. Time for a donut. I'm watching my weight. So I got the tank pretty much ready to go back in. I got to find a screw type clamp. I'm not a real big fan of the clampy clamp types. I like the actual screw clamps on here because I've had these pull air, cause fuel supply problems. So I got sections of hose. All I could find here was this red hose, but that's okay. Matches the car. All I gotta do is put my wires on there. As you can see, these are the tabs that snap into these little bumps there. That's kind of what you want to see. Make sure that these little tabs are locked in all the way around, and that this ring is centered in the hole so they can get offside. But here in a second, we'll pop this dude in after I finish my donut. So I got my little screw here that goes to the chassis ground. Let's do a little inspection on it. See all that rust on there? Don't slap that puppy back up in there till you clean that rust off there with a wire brush or something. Because if this doesn't make a good connection to the chassis, that gauge ain't gonna work. Another thing, on the other side of that is where that screw goes. They make these nifty little wire brushes. They're used a lot in aviation, that you just center right in your screw hole, pull the O trigger, and it cleans you down a perfectly good bare metal spot. So, let's hop up here and I'll show you. My arm in there. Hang on, y'all are in the way. Okay, that's my screw hole. Go the other way. The other way. All right, see that? That's gonna be a good ground. Now back to my comment about electrical system's not working and having grounding problems. If all those little cables that go from your engine block to your frame and your frame to your body, if you look in your engine bay and they're all disconnected, you need to reconnect them. Buy a new one. They're super cheap. You can buy them at O'Reilly's off the shelf or AutoZone or all those other parts places. Because if this car is missing the grounds that go from the body to the engine to the frame, guess what's not going to work? A lot of stuff, but this fuel gauge ain't going to work because your electrical power loop from your positive to your negative is not complete. So you're not going to have a good ground, so you're not going to have a gas gauge. Even if you got a brand new gauge, a brand new sending unit, still not going to work. So get your body grounds squared away, clean them, buy new ones, and you'll eliminate a lot of your electrical problems. Okay, last thing I'm gonna do before we put this tank in is blow out this fuel line here. This goes straight to the front, right by the fuel pump. I'm gonna get up there and hit it with the old nozzle, and depending on what comes out of here, we'll either plan on replacing it or using it. There's no visible heavy rust on the outside, and back when this car was run, there was no ethanol gas, so as long as we don't get a copious amount of junk out of there, we'll just hook that sucker up. So keep your eyeball on that for me. Let me know what you see. Smells a little gassy. Looks a little muddy. Definitely old gas. That stuff's been in there for a long time. Got my tank ready to go. Got my clamps in place. Got my line taped up there for my wires so they don't fall off. I'm going to pick that up, carry it over here, slip it up in there just using my hands, and then I'm going to slide my transmission jack, put a little pressure on it where it needs to be, and then I'll hook these little fellers up and hook my wires up and hoses up, and we'll be done in the back. Get this little feller. Snaggled up into there. My vent lines around the exhaust. Get my tank around the exhaust. Okay. Get my transmission jack. If you ain't got a transmission jack and you're doing this on the ground, I'd recommend a set of hands. Okay. So now I want to make sure my tank is squared up in the hole where it needs to be, which it is, before I smash it up against the floor. If you don't have it positioned right, it's not going to want to clamp in place. Okay, looks pretty good. Okay, so I put just enough pressure on it where I think I can get the straps. I have pre-lubed these guys. This can be the hard part of this job, getting these things started. These look like they're gonna go nicely. Shouldn't jinx myself till they actually do go nicely. These are actually, these clamps up here that these screw into are actual just clips with the, you know, whatever that is, the tack welded nut on them. But when you're taking these off, if you don't want them things to break, clean the tops of them off and put a wrench on the top of them. That way you can hold that in place and not have to worry about the clip snapping, because that's what will happen 99% of the time if you just put your impact on there and go to hammering. Oh, for a second there, I forgot what I done with my bolt. My exhaust is right in the way. Whew, a little rust in the eyeballs, that's good. Good for the old contacts. I hate contacts, by the way, but I like seeing, so I tolerate it. Okay, that went super easy. Make sure my straps are pretty much where they need to be. I'm gonna get my wrench, I'm gonna get my gun, and run them up. All right, let's fire away. Making pretty good time. This has been fairly painless up to this point. You want to draw these guys in equally. Just hammer one in and then not touch the other one. Like I said, hold your the top of your captive nut captive with a wrench. Don't rely on that old clamp. It won't work. I run them in until the end of the strap just starts to bow a little. And then call it quits. I've never had straps back off, except for one incident with my pickup truck, and it had metal straps, plate straps. You don't want to crush the tank, so don't go overboard with it. Now what I need to do is get my ground in. I was a little concerned it might not be long enough, clearly for good reason, because it ain't. So I have two options: lengthen the wire and go to its original location, or just drill a new hole. So let me think. I think I'll just extend the wire, put it where it's supposed to go, use its original screw, call that good. Alrighty then. I had concerns that this sending unit wire was not long enough, and it wasn't, so I extended it enough to be able to get to its original location. The other option would have been drilling a hole, and I'm not really, already got everything prepped, got my screw ready, so I can extend that wire in 2 or 3 minutes. This will complete our circuit to my nice rusty floor pan. So if my gauge works, well, I guess I'll just throw that there. So if my gauge works, I get in here and turn the key on. The gas gauge should go to full empty. Next up is my fuel line. I leave these a little long and trim them off to the correct length, which I've already done. Off camera, forgot to hit the record button. Okay, I'm back. It's also hard to keep my arms out of your way. YouTubing is a lot harder than I thought it was. All right. So now we have a working sending unit and a new tank, and nothing old left in the system other than the carburetor and the length of metal line running up to the pump. So I'll tuck my vents up where they go and call this deal done. Go to the front. If you forget to, or you just don't want to, put your vent lines in, you're gonna lose gas every time you go around the corner. So ask me how I know that. Yeah. So every time you get a full tank, every corner you make, you're throwing gas out on the ground, which isn't cool. Gas is expensive, especially 100, well, no ethanol gas that I like to run this stuff. Alrighty then. Well, that wraps up that part of the process. That tank won't be up there for a real long time. Whenever I do the trunk pan, I'll be pulling it back out, but got new fuel hose, sending unit. Sprayed some rust stopping or slowing primer on there. That's actually just a complete load of BS because it doesn't actually work, but it is a coating, which is better than nothing. So cool thing is you can just reach up in your bumper there and get stuff out of the trunk. Not everybody can do that. Off camera, I went ahead and broke loose 2 of the 3 studs for the small wires on this because, quite frankly, it's pretty boring watching somebody fight with little fasteners. This single exhaust, which has some rust holes in it, is inconveniently placed right underneath the long starter bolt. So this is going to be fun. By fun, I mean it's going to not be fun. Okay, I don't know how well this is going to work with a wobbly on it. Hoping I don't have to pull the exhaust off. Can't even see the bolt. Okay, where are we at? This is dumb. This is dumb. Why? Okay, I'm on it. I don't know. Hopefully this don't come apart and hit me in the face. Ooh. I don't like the feel of that at all. The whole starter moved. Okay. I don't know if this bolt wasn't loose or if it stripped out or the wrong size, but I don't know, that whole starter moved. I don't like that. Let's try this. Seems to have threads in it anyways. I'll try my best not to drop the starter on y'all's face. Or mine, for that matter. Come on out, baby. Okay. Okay. Let's see, now I get that last deal off there. And I can't get my wrench out of my pocket with my gloves on. Okay, shove you back up in there for a second. Damn. Wrong size. Crap. Okay. Hang on. Well, that wasn't very convenient. Okay. There are on this starter, there is a terminal where you have a wire that goes up to the coil that supplies your 12 volts while you're cranking. So I think that somewhere there is where my problem lies with not having voltage while cranking. So after doing a quick inspection of this starter, I noticed a few things. One, just like that fastener is loose. More importantly, see right there and right there where the flex plate has chewed up the starter. And you can't tell it from here really well, but you can tell that the front edge of those, the collar the teeth mounts to, looks like it's gotten into the flywheel as well. So it's kind of odd. I've done a lot of starters on these Buicks and I've never had one that had to be shimmed. So I'm gonna go ahead under the car and pull off the dust shield that mounts to the transmission so I can run this up there and check the tooth engagement before I hit the key. So I'll probably do that off camera because it's pretty boring. But I'll get the starter stuff to back up in there and probably let you watch that part. Then we'll check the engagement of the teeth. Okay, got my starter. Going to put it up in here and attempt to put my most difficult to get to wire on it. Where are you at? There you are. Probably go ahead and just throw about a half a stack of shims at it. See where we wind up after that. I usually don't put these little lock washers on these wires on starters because it seems like they jam them up and you can't get them off, or whatever causes a problem and winds up stripping them. I've never had a starter wire just jiggle off with or without one of those, so I'm not particularly concerned. Okay, wedge it in here and grab my long starter bolt. I'll try not to drop that on anybody's head. It will hurt really bad. Funny story about working under a motor one time. You guys like funny stories? I was trying to get the torque converter bolts out of a truck motor one time. They had bad head gasket, a really bad head gasket, and I was down there fighting with it. Now, standing right about where I'm standing now, had the exhaust all pulled out, and I had a big old breaker bar up there on the crank. I was turning the engine over. Okay, got my starter. Going to put it up in here and attempt to put my most difficult to get to wire on it. Where are you at? There you are. Probably go ahead and just throw about a half a stack of shims at it. See where we wind up after that. I usually don't put these little lock washers on these wires on starters because it seems like they jam them up and you can't get them off, or whatever causes a problem and winds up stripping them. I've never had a starter wire just jiggle off with or without one of those, so I'm not particularly concerned. Okay, wedge it in here and grab my long starter bolt. I'll try not to drop that on anybody's head. It will hurt really bad. Funny story about working under a motor one time. You guys like funny stories? I was trying to get the torque converter bolts out of a truck motor one time. They had bad head gasket, a really bad head gasket, and I was down there fighting with it. Now, standing right about where I'm standing now, had the exhaust all pulled out, and I had a big old breaker bar up there on the crank. Well, after that rude interruption from my air compressor, finished my story. So there I was, all alone in the shop, spin that crank, and took a bath in some nasty antifreeze. Mud, actually. Had a little oil in it. Right on top of the head, because I was standing right underneath the exhaust manifold. Cylinder filled up with antifreeze, and I just pumped it right out on my head. That was pretty cool. It's an experience. Okay, so what I've done here is, with no shims in it at all, I ran both starter bolts up snug, and that flex plate's nowhere near hitting the starter. So I'm not sure what the heck that was there for. I'm gonna get in there and pop the teeth out, check my starter engagement. But like I said, I've never had to shim one of these starters on a Buick. Well, if a feller has never checked your tooth engagement on a starter, you get up under there and you crank that Bendix out. You see where it hits your teeth on the flex plate. See how you've got a little bit of a gap between the top of your tooth and the inside valley of the flex plate? It's got maybe a 60-70% overlap there. It definitely does not need shims. What you want to check for is that when you slide your Bendix in and out like this, see it moving? Probably can't see it moving, but you don't want it to bind or get stuck in the teeth like it's too tight. If it's too tight, your starter won't disengage right. So there's nothing wrong here. So we're good on that. I'm gonna go ahead and just snug them up. I'll just leave the dust cover off, just because pretty good chance either the engine or trans or starter or something will have to come off in the future. I don't feel like messing with it. Now I'm eating a chocolate donut with sprinkles. So I'll crank the bolts down, put those wires back on the front. That'll be good to go. Got my bigger breaker bar here. Ratchet, I mean. Put a little horsepower on these bolts. And snap them wires on. If you ever want to tear something up, go to the hardware store, buy you some generic off-the-shelf bolts, and stick them in your starter. You're gonna tear something up. Had a 396 car come in one time, and some idiot put a starter on it, snapped the corner right off the block. That's an expensive mistake. Okay, so I thought I had, but I don't have a proper length positive battery cable, so I'm not gonna be able to put all the wires on yet. I'll probably just pop those on off camera. Nothing exciting about that. Now comes the time of the day where I make a big mess. I gotta drain about a quart of oil out of this. Might get some water, depending on if there's any flood water condensation left in it from sitting for the last couple of years. This is gonna be messy, I think. This is a 1 quart container, so I'll get at least close to a quart. I'm gonna put about that much trans fluid, Marvel Mystery Oil in the crankcase. Try to get that last lifter shut up a little bit. Oh Lord. And mess time. This oil's got about 2 hours of runtime on it. It's first fresh oil this motor's had in it for 30-some years, so kind of wanted to give it an analyze anyways. Pretty sure I'm going to find a lot of metal shavings and stuff in it. I can see a little bit in it, but I'm going to see what I'm up against. I still don't have a whole lot of faith that this motor is going to last me any length of time, just based simply on the fact that it sat for so long, got flooded, sat with lake water in it. She was completely seized, so my hopes are not high. It actually runs pretty good. The longer it runs, the better it runs, but I mean, this motor's got quite a bit of miles on it anyways from back in the 80s, so it is not in minty shape. I see silver on the plug, so I know it's got metal in it. I don't know how badly the rings were stuck when it flooded. When I first got the car, it was nice and loose, but sitting for 2 or 3 days with swamp water in it, it's not good for it. It took me some time to get the thing broke free, so it's not ideal situation. Upon closer inspection, the old motor oil don't really look that bad. It's kind of at that point right between going from clean looking to dirty looking. There's really not much metal. There's definitely some whitish condensation looking stuff, but. And on a side note, y'all remember them cuts I put all over my hand on accident on the old tank back there? Well, I forgot. And now I remember, because I washed my hands with paint thinner. That was really, really dumb. Hey, it's me. Got a new battery cable popped up in there, positive. Now go ahead and see about wrenching this around and getting it snugged up. Having big hands makes it good to be a mechanic and makes it bad to be a mechanic all at the same time. Times like this, where you can't get your big hands up in somewhere, inconvenience. But then you need to get some horsepowers down on something, then it's handy. Let's see here. I have to show you this old battery cable. It's horrible. I think something cut it. Like, it looks like it got right up against something and just went to town doing the old welding routine. All right, where is the other wire? You know it's here. Oh, there it is. There it is. You can quit looking. Okay. You always got to be careful when you're putting on your starter wires that nothing flip-flops around and energizes stuff when it ain't supposed to be. That's never convenient. Okay, snug one more wire and we are done with this starter project. That is if I can get onto the bolt and if starter works. Okay, squared away there. On to the next project. All right, so what I got to do now is take my little fuel hose filter assembly and put it on here to my frame rail line. Come on. Come on, baby. I know you don't want to. You can go on there just fine. Come on. Okay, good. Knock my light over. Okay. This filter is only going to be on there for a short period of time, just to catch any remaining debris that happens to be in this fuel line, the metal line that goes from here to the tank. The one we blew out and shot hucky puck all over the floor, that one. It should clear up pretty quick. I just don't want anything going right straight into the fuel pump or the carburetor. So anything that's stuck in there will get caught by this filter, and then once it starts to clear up, then I'll replace it and with just regular straight piece of hose. Then whatever's left will get caught by the filter that's right in front of the pump. Run out of angle here for the old hand. Okay, that's better. Now I need to get this hose off, which goes up to the old fuel tank, which is the little 1 gallon can, which thankfully will not be needed anymore. Okay, get that out of the way. And whip this one around. I don't have a whole lot of room for this. I need to trim it a little more to keep it off of the steering here. Cut a couple inches off. Don't want your steering ripping holes in your fuel line. Or anything ripping holes in your fuel line. Okay. That'll clear. Get my clampy turned around. Get it at an angle I can use. Let's see. Ouch. Scraped my old cut on the power steering gearbox casting. It felt great. Alrighty. I picked up 10 gallons of fuel. It'll be the first tank of gas this car's had in 36 years, probably, maybe more than that. Shouldn't have any more problems with the fuel system. It's other than the actual carburetor and a couple of sections of metal line, it's all new. Come on. Here's a better view. Got our main fuel line coming out of the frame rail. Through my little filter up into the pump.